Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I guess we can file this one under never underestimate the power of your own stupidity. Ron DeSantis' so-called campaign is falling faster than ESPN's ratings. Gee, I can't imagine what could have possibly gone wrong, though I can take a few educated guesses at it. Ron DeSantis will be remembered as the first political casualty of 21st century internet culture. The entire reason he decided to surround himself with idiots like Christopher Rufo and pursue this asinine strategy of attacking black people is because DeSantis has no charisma, he has no charm, and no ideas. He can't run on having a dynamic personality because he doesn't. He can't run on being oddly likable with voters because nobody likes him, not even other Florida Republicans. And he can't run on all of his great policies because his only policy has been attacking black people. The white media has been completely flummoxed when it comes to why DeSantis isn't trying to attack Trump. This is the reason why you need the black media to give you common sense analysis. The reason DeSantis isn't even trying to take on Donald Trump is for the same reason that he hasn't been trying to take on Joe Biden. DeSantis isn't running against Trump, or even against Biden for that matter. He is, and has spent several years now, running against black people. That's who DeSantis' true political opponent is, as he sees it. He thinks wrongly that attacking black people was the entire reason that he got reelected last year. All of his so-called policies have been nothing more than blatant attacks on black people and making it clear to his racist white base that that's who he's running against. Only problem for him is black people aren't on the ballot. But since that's the only trick he knows, he has to stick to it regardless. His entire strategy to become a national candidate was to raise his profile by doing all this racist performative extremism, which he would then use to get himself some face time on Fox News nighttime, rinse and repeat. Tucker Carlson's show was DeSantis' entire get out the vote effort. Tucker Carlson was his entire platform. But now that the frozen food fascist is gone from Fox's airwaves, DeSantis doesn't know what to do, because he's lost his entire platform. So why doesn't he get himself off this one-way trip to oblivion? Because DeSantis is terminally online, and it shows. This is a man who is not playing to voters. He's playing to the racist white online crowd. When you see him obsessing over things like woke and CRT, that comes from these racist online sewers like 4chan, Reddit, Daily Wire, Daily Caller. In fact, every word that comes out of his ignorant little mouth is actually what you see in these racist right-wing comment sections. Whatever momentum DeSantis thought that he had from attacking critical race theory ran out a long time ago. And DeSantis, showing what a political idiot he is, didn't know the difference between when a political issue is more useful alive than dead. Part of why the GOP likes to attack the gays is because they can use fear-mongering about the LGBT agenda to drive their voters to the polls. The Republicans never actually planned to do anything about the so-called LGBT threat because the boogeyman of claiming that the gays were going to turn the children homosexual was always more of a motivator to get GOP voters to the polls. This was why in red states, the GOP would put some ballot measure or other targeting gay marriage or some other aspect of gay rights on the ballot during an election year. Not during an off year, but during an election year. That way, even though their voters didn't want to have to show up to support the GOP's candidates, putting an issue to attack gay rights on the ballot was their way of getting the voters to show up anyway. Yeah, you may not be there because you want to vote for these crappy GOP candidates, but hey, we got this issue about the gays on the ballots. You gotta show up to support that, and while you're there, you'll probably click a couple of buttons for some GOP candidates too. Now, if you go and ban gay marriage altogether, then you lose an issue. You have nothing to drive voters to the polls. And when it comes to attacking black people, that's exactly what DeSantis did. He was so eager to show that he could defeat these political boogeymen that he had set up that in the process he put laws on the books that got struck down by the courts. And he also lost any incentive for his voters to turn out and support him in 2024. Besides, DeSantis has been bragging about how he's defeated woke. Well, if that's the case, then there's no need to elect him to do it again. This is why politicians often will not actually try to solve their constituents' problems, even though their voters complain about it all the time. Because politicians know that the moment that you actually solve people's problems, you lose an issue to run on, and voters have no incentive to turn out to vote you back into office again. Democrats have been pulling this one on black people for generations. DeSantis also isn't helping himself by trying to replay his greatest hits either. His critical race theory hysteria ran out of gas a long time ago, and you can tell that the white right's been desperately trying to find their next CRT, which is why you see DeSantis using this word salad of random acronyms like DEI, ESG, ABC, etc. Fomenting racial hysteria around critical race theory is the closest to a success that he's had in his entire political career. So that's why he's been desperately trying to find a new critical race theory. After all, he passed laws allegedly killing critical race theory in Florida, and now that that straw man's gone, he doesn't have anything to follow up with, and he desperately needs something. He needs some momentum from anything he can get at all. He's recycled all the same talking points about critical race theory, and now he's using new acronyms like ESG and DEI, but is not gaining them any traction, not even among the racist right wing. Why? Because their entire strategy with critical race theory was that it was going to hurt white children. That was their entire strategy. You can't make that claim when talking about hedge funds and corporate outreach programs. There's no white children in schools to save on this one. The same racist trash who right-wing think tanks hire to go cause disruptions at school board meetings, they can't do that at a corporate headquarters or a Fortune 500 boardroom. They would get arrested if they even tried. So when it comes to these new acronyms that they're desperately trying to get some traction for, they don't have the ability to manufacture phony images of angry, paid white operatives putting on phony white outrage. That's why this new alphabet soup strategy by DeSantis isn't going anywhere. People have already seen this song and dance from him before, and he doesn't have any school children he can claim to have their feelings hurt. He can't push the same buttons as he did before, and even if he could, it doesn't have the same punch as before because the novelty is gone now. DeSantis screams white children's feelings are being hurt about everything. People have seen him scream reverse racism so much among the white right that it's lost its ability to motivate them. Because let's be honest, when you claim that Disneyland hates white people, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for things to be outraged by. This is what I've told you about why DeSantis' performative extremism was damned to fail before it even began. The problem with going to the extreme is that after you've gone to the extreme, you leave yourself nowhere else to go but down. And as bad as DeSantis' lack of charisma or charm may be, there's an even bigger deficit that he can never overcome, and that's his total lack of character. That's at the very heart of why his campaign was damned to fail before it even began. Instead of being honest with himself and surrounding himself with people who would actually tell him the truth about himself and his campaign, instead he did what all intellectually dishonest people do. He surrounded himself with a bunch of yes-men, flunkies, and toadies who would just tell him whatever he wanted to hear, like how great he is, how terrible black people are, and how all of America agrees with him. This is why clowns like Christopher Rufo are doing what they're doing. Rufo's just trying to grift a check for himself, so DeSantis gave him a make-work job as a university board member, which Rufo is patently unqualified to do, and while DeSantis sinks, Rufo is in hiding. Rufo's racial hysteria grift was cute for a while, but now it's run its course, and he sees that DeSantis is sinking fast, and as for Rufo, he doesn't have a follow-up grift behind this, so he's been laying low, no doubt looking for a new clueless Republican politician with more ego than brains who he can latch on to next. This is the problem with politicians playing to the online message boards. That's why DeSantis chose to launch his presidential campaign on Twitter, because after Elon Musk bought the website, DeSantis thought that made it a go-to spot for all these white racist DeSantis has been playing to online. And I'm sure Elon Musk told him that he had aggregated and concentrated all these white supremacists in one spot, and that DeSantis would be able to talk directly to millions of angry white racists who, of course, couldn't wait to vote for him, and that this would be a data-driven approach to campaigning that would revolutionize voter outreach, etc. You know, the typical Silicon Valley spiel. Well, even if the so-called launch hadn't been plagued by countless technical issues, it still didn't motivate anyone to want to vote for DeSantis, not even the online racists. A lot of these white supremacists loved it when Dave Chappelle lambasted the angry LGBT advocates who attacked him. You'll recall that Chappelle said the reason he wasn't scared of them was because, quote, Twitter isn't real. The racist right-wingers love that because this was before Musk bought the website. Well, Musk owns it now. Desantis bet all his chips on Twitter being real. And what a surprise, Twitter still isn't real, not even for the white right. See, this is what happens when you have liars and hypocrites being forced to face reality. Twitter won't suddenly become real just because you replace nihilistic left-wing lunatics with nihilistic right-wing lunatics. Desantis didn't understand that. And this failure to realize reality isn't new for him. Desantis did nothing when he was in Congress either. He was a self-interested clown who even then was desperately trying to make a name for himself with over-the-top performative extremism, like the time he said that New York shouldn't get disaster relief after Hurricane Sandy because, well, it's not a red state. Nobody took him seriously when he was in Congress. His name got on no legislation because nobody knew he existed. He could be counted on to vote the right way come time to vote on legislation, but that was it. That's why nobody remembers that the most obnoxious person in American politics today was also trying to be the most obnoxious person on Capitol Hill several years back. That's why after he failed to gain any political traction in D.C., he slithered back to Florida to see if he could raise his political profile there instead. He ran for governor against Andrew Big Bussy Gillum and barely squeaked out a win on that one. Even back then, you could already see that DeSantis's two-cycle weed whacker of a brain, if it could be called that, was hard at work trying to see what noisy, over-the-top stunts he could do to up his profile and hopefully get this would-be run for higher office going. So he began his culture war shtick. He brought in political incompetents like Christopher Rufo. He took the wrong message away from Trump's success, which was play to the base. Trump played to the base all right, but he also made sure to play to people outside of the base. As a candidate, Donald Trump had a far more well-balanced base than DeSantis could ever hope for. And DeSantis, being a political incompetent, he plays to the base and no one else. He really overestimated his success and his abilities when he was able to beat the human cadaver Charlie Crist last year. I mean, who couldn't beat that guy? That's no tale of victory. That was just a fait accompli. DeSantis has a compliant state legislature which has willfully abdicated all of their authority and just acts as a rubber stamp for him. Most of the legislation that they pass winds up getting struck down by the courts, but they don't care. It's all about getting attention. DeSantis' entire political strategy was to get as much airtime on TV as he could, and while it's true that TV airtime is the most important part of a political campaign, it's also true that the wrong kind of TV publicity will kill your campaign. DeSantis is not popular outside of Florida and a few blood-red counties in Texas, Georgia, and a few other racist southern backwaters. When you sit around in a circle of people telling each other how great they are, you tend to overestimate the appeal of your bad ideas and underestimate how unpopular you truly are. That's why DeSantis actually thinks it's a good thing for him to say that he's going to make the U.S. just like Florida. When he claimed that, he sent a shock of terror throughout the entire country. DeSantis has spent so much time outside of Florida running for the presidency that he's totally oblivious and unconcerned about what a hellscape that state has become. On his watch, he has no clue how Americans actually see the state of Florida. Homeowners insurance in Florida is through the roof. That is, for the few people who can get it. Almost all of the state insurance carriers in Florida have left the state on DeSantis' watch. He single-handedly ran Florida's insurance industry into the ground because he refused to deal with the state's insurance crisis. He was too busy running for president. And what was his proposal to get all of those insurance carriers to come back to Florida? He said, knock on wood, let's hope there's no hurricanes this year. I wish I was making that up. He has no strategy to get the insurance companies back, and he has no answers for the people who need insurance in that state now but can't get it. So what does he propose to do? Knock on wood and hope for no hurricanes. His strategy for dealing with the fact that his state has no insurance protection is literally superstition and denial. Gee, who would have thought that banning books doesn't stop hurricanes? I thought that was the cure-all. That must have been the answer to all of Florida's problems, because that's all he's been doing. See, this is what happens when DeSantis can't say woke to an issue, which is why he doesn't know what to do. Hurricanes don't care about anti-black race baiting. He spent most of his time whining about critical race theory, which isn't a problem, instead of dealing with the state's true issues. But then again, how could he solve any of the issues facing Florida? He can't actually solve any of the state's problems because he doesn't know how. That's why he race baits. It's all been a political bluff on his part. And the cost of living in Florida is utterly out of control. Not that Governor Clueless has said a word about it. Miami is now the least affordable city to live in America. And Florida is quickly becoming the least affordable state. All you get from going to Florida is low state taxes, but that doesn't mean anything when the cost of living is 50% higher than anywhere else in America. Low state taxes are not what makes a place affordable to live in. The cost of housing is, and Florida is losing that battle miserably. But DeSantis doesn't care. He dangles some race bait in front of his brain-dead minions, and they forget how lousy their own lives are because of that. Anti-black racism is the political opiate for the masses. And this idiot has no clue that it's no feather in his cap to claim that the rest of the country should somehow want to emulate Florida. Florida has always had a reputation for being a weird state at best, but now it's weird, psychopathically racist, and unaffordable. Nobody wants their state, much less the rest of America, to become that. The reason Ron DeSantis is struggling so hard and failing so much is because there was never anything there to begin with. Just anti-black slogans and phony white grievance. Now, just because the most incompetent governor in the history of a basket case state is going down in flames, that doesn't mean Democrats can rest easy in the knowledge that black people are politically irrelevant, because that's what Democrats are hoping for. First of all, voters didn't vote for Trump in 2016 because they thought that he was the best candidate for the job. The Trump base could best be broken down into two distinct groups. White racists who desperately wanted someone to repudiate the Obama years because since 2008 they had the white right-wing media saying erase the Obama administration, which to the white racists meant erase the fact that a black man had been president. That was and remains the largest part of the Trump base, but there's also a second part of the Trump base, the one that put him over the top and got him the presidency. These were the disaffected people who were tired of being ignored by policymakers and who wanted to give a huge, or as Trump would say, huge middle finger to the political establishment of both parties. Nobody wanted Hillary to be president. She represented everything wrong with American politics and American life. Nobody wanted Biden to be president either, but Trump had spent 4 solid years making himself the most obnoxious person on earth and also committing a number of political missteps, because he had one eye on his poll numbers and the other eye on the loudmouths in his white racist base who were having him commit political suicide. But there's also another potential problem on the horizon that Democrats are not exactly looking at, because there is someone in Republican circles who managed to do the racist, anti-black, anti-woke hate-mongering, but who isn't obnoxious like DeSantis and doesn't make people want to puke at the mere sight of him. I'm talking about Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia. He won election last year on a platform of anti-black, anti-woke rhetoric, though unlike DeSantis, Youngkin was just smart enough not to go overboard with it. Youngkin showed far better judgment and far better restraint than DeSantis when it came to his anti-black race baiting. Youngkin is as racist as DeSantis, but he's also less off-putting to voters, and he actually has half a brain. Now in Virginia, governors are not allowed to serve 2 consecutive terms. You get to serve 1 term, then you have to wait another 4 years before you can serve the second. For Youngkin, that means after DeSantis bows out of the race, he could throw his hat in the ring, but most likely he'll serve his entire first term as governor and position himself for a 2028 run instead. Now sure, if the Republicans get really desperate, he could be thrown into the 2024 race, though if the never-Trumpers and other GOP groups who see that DeSantis is flaming out want to position Youngkin, they better move fast, because it's only 5 months before the first primaries and only a year until the RNC convention. Even Biden, who came out of nowhere, announced his candidacy for the presidency in April of 2019, which was merely a year and a half before the election, and even that was considered a last-minute entry into the race. Glenn Youngkin has no name recognition, however, and no accomplishments to speak of. Nobody knows who he is, so he would have to invent a national profile and support base for himself out of the gate, on the fly. Even DeSantis was smart enough to start campaigning for the presidency 3 years ago, the second Trump lost. Sadly for DeSantis, that was about the only smart move he made. And as for DeSantis' political future, well, even if by some miracle he does grow a brain, that's going to happen long before he grows a personality, and in American politics, a personality is more important than intelligence. It's hard to see how he pulls his campaign out of this tailspin, even if Trump does get struck by lightning. So what will DeSantis do after he's forced to drop out of the race next year? Well, as a washed-up, failed former governor and failed presidential candidate, I imagine he'll probably do just like Mike Huckabee and try to find himself a job on Fox News whining full-time about black people and wokeness. Though it's much more likely he'll wind up prostituting himself to some right-wing think tank, just like John Boehner and other Republicans do, talking to right-wing luncheons and confabs for cash. But what he won't be doing is fighting woke. I would love to say that the humiliating fall of moron DeSantis will be a cautionary tale in politics, but in reality, none of these politicians will learn anything from it. DeSantis' war on black people is what American politics is all about, both Republican and Democrats. The closest to learning anything from DeSantis' decline that the politicians will come is to find someone who isn't an annoying cardboard cutout like DeSantis is, someone who isn't eminently unlikable and who has something resembling a personality, which will be a distinction without a difference. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Terrence Mobile, Alexandria Victor, Darkside Blues, Jimmy Whitfield, and Immigrant B1. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.